freedom ring this afternoon at 2 with Sean Hannity. Right before Joe Walsh at 5 on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, and Al Franken's back, and John Conyers may be on his way out, Amy.
Oh, yeah. Al Franken sat down yesterday with only local reporters from Minneapolis after he's been hiding out for 10 days, saying that, he's sorry, but he is going to continue to go to work.
I can't say that hasn't happened. I take thousands and thousands of pictures. We sometimes in crowded and chaotic situations. I can't say I haven't done that, and I am very sorry if these women experience that.
So he's saying that he can't say whether or not he's touched women's butts when they pose for pictures. He doesn't remember touching that one woman's butt talks, but he can't say whether or not it's happened before.
You take thousands of pictures. You can't keep track of everyone you grope and everyone you don't grope. I mean, who can keep track of all that?
Body parts are in different places on different people, Dan.
There's no question about it. It's a real conundrum that Senator Franken finds himself in, as does John Conyers. Now, it's interesting. We just talked to Noah Rothman from Commentary. He suggests Conyers should step down because, and I didn't realize this, because he's got, he believes he's losing his faculties, like he's got early onset. Not so early. He's
old
man, but he's got dementia.
And has had it for years, and people are protecting him.
Well, protecting him over the weekend on the Sunday talkies was Nancy Pelosi, the iconic John Conyers. She told Chuck Todd on Meet the Press.
You said there's now a zero tolerance.
Yes.
John Conyers, what does that mean for him now?
Let's say
in or out?
We are strengthened by due process. Mm-hmm. Just because someone is accused. And was it one accusation? Is it two? I think there has to be. John Conyers is an icon in our country. He has done a great deal to protect women, Violence Against Women Act, which the right wing is now quoting me as praising him for his work on that, and he did great work on that. But the fact is, as John reviews his case, which he knows, which I don't, I believe he will do.
Don't you?
I believe that he will.
Is it that
excuse me, may I finish my sentence?
Sure.
That he will do the right thing.
And is the right thing what? Resign?
He will do the right thing in terms of what he knows about his situation, that he's entitled to due process, but women are entitled to due process as well.
But he took advantage of a situation where he had the rules of Congress, and I know you guys want to change these rules, but he got to hide his settlement. He got to, his accusers had to go through all sorts of craziness. So why is he entitled to new due process in this case?
No, we are talking about what we have heard. I've asked the Ethics Committee to review that. Yeah. He has said he'd be open. It will cooperate.
Do you believe
with
the
any
accusers?
Review. Excuse me?
Do you believe John Conyers is accused?
I don't know who they are. Do you? They have not really come forward. And that gets
so you don't know if you believe the accusations?
That's for the Ethics Committee to review. But I believe he understands what is at stake here, and he will do the right thing.
Yeah. When political interests run into your erstwhile feminism, right? Representative Pelosi. Yeah. By the way, there's a celebrity perv apology generator. Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
This could also be used by members of Congress.
Celebrity perv apology? What is it?
Celebrity perv apology generator. It's a widget that some people created. Rob Sheridan, Scott McCaughey, Dana Schwartz. For example, this should be laminated in like a wallet-sized card that members of Congress, the D.C. press corps, and Hollywood could carry around with them. I'll give you an example. Here's how you apologize. Sort of like what you heard from Franken. If some of these women experienced something that they didn't enjoy, I'm sorry for that. As someone who grew up in a different era, harassment is completely unacceptable, especially when people find out about it. At the time, I believed that my sociopathic manipulation of the 22-year-old in my office was consensual, and of course now I realize my behavior was wrong. In conclusion, I will not change anything about my actions or behavior. Pretty good. There's some good ones there. There's some specific for the Golden Globes parties. And,
okay.
Yeah, it's very good, very creative. All right, for more on this topic of a serious nature, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Sharyl Attkisson, an investigative journalist, author of The Smear, How Shady Political Operatives and Fake News Control What You See, What You Think, and How You Vote. Sharyl, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So you penned a piece for The Hill, how the sex abuse allegations, some of which we were just talking about there with respect to Franken and Conyers, but many others, expose the media's hypocrisy on Trump. Explain your contention.
Well, that headline was picked, of course, by The Hill. You know, we don't write our own headlines.
Right.
And that was their takeaway. My takeaway, sort of my intention was, how are certain people in our profession being promoted and hired in the first place when there are widely known things about them? What does our profession value, even as we're writing about the shortfalls of important political figures, for example, what's happening in our own house? And I highlight the case of the New York Times reporter Glenn Thrush,
Right.
who's under investigation for misconduct allegations. And before the New York Times hired Glenn Thrush, they already knew from WikiLeaks documents that he had pre-approved improperly, in my view, and unethically, pre-approved stories with Hillary's campaign manager and done things like that, called himself a hack in internal emails, jokingly but only half-jokingly. And yet this is a guy that they thought was fit to hire at the New York Times to promote from Politico to report fairly and impartially on the president. And the things that he's written about the president are very similar, as you see in my article, to the things that he's being accused of. So it's just a question I wanted to raise about our profession.
As a journalist and someone who's worked in several newsrooms, have you ever experienced sexual harassment?
Oh, my gosh. I mean, by what we're defining today as sexual harassment, I think when I talk with my friends, you wonder where to begin in that discussion, because constantly. But I would say it didn't hurt me in terms of, I think women learn how to kind of deal with it, handle it, get around it, move on, so that it doesn't hurt their careers. And I think I come from a time, I'm 56 years old, when I'll just tell you one quick story. I don't think I put this in any of my books. Who cares? But my first job, and I was 20, whatever, early 20s, 21 or so, the general manager, who I think is deceased now, by the way, but this was down in Florida, called me in and told me he heard I was getting married, and he threw $40 down on the table and told me to buy a wedding present for myself. And I thought, okay. And I picked up the cash, and he said, buy yourself a bikini. And he chuckled. And then he says, take a picture of yourself in and bring it back to me. Show me the picture. And
So creepy.
I remember going home and telling my fiancé, my husband now, do you think he's serious? And my husband was like, yes, he's serious. Obviously don't do it. But it was just awkward. I mean, from awkward to then one other quick one in Orlando, interviewing for a job, the assistant news director, when they were going to hire me as a producer. And I said, well, will I have the next opening as a reporter, which is what I really wanted to be. And he pointed out in the newsroom and said, see that girl there? And I said, yeah. He said, you know how bad she wants to be a reporter? She would lay down on this desk and let me F her right now. When he used the word.
Yeah.
And again, I'm like, why is he saying this to me? He also invited me to spend the night at his house, and I kept saying, I only live an hour away. I can drive. And, just things like that are commonplace, I think, in our industry.
Going back to the media, sticking with the media, I guess I should say, and particularly someone, that's a couple of generations ahead of you, but Charlie Rose. This may be the biggest name to fall so far, and again, we find out when one woman comes forward and sort of breaks the seal, and then people follow. But a lot of people protected Charlie Rose. Is that fair? Or were intimidated by Charlie Rose? I mean, part of this is trying to figure out where the lines are of culpability, isn't it? If you're an enabler or a protector, or you just kind of legitimately describe yourself as being intimidated and not wanting to have your career suffer as a result of stepping in when somebody's acting inappropriately.
When everybody around you so admires somebody as they do or did Charlie Rose, and speaks of him so highly, while under their breath saying, with a chuckle, what a partier he is. I never heard, by the way, these allegations about him with women or with unwanted advances with women. I heard he stays up all night, he parties like a 20-year-old and chuckle. And are you going to be the one if something does happen to you, again, in your profession that everybody looks at because you said something bad about the fun guy on the block that everybody likes? And this is, I would say it's not terribly uncommon. Again, there's way more things I've heard, and I think, as other people say, shoes that will fall because it's just so incredibly common. And I'm not talking about rape. I'm talking about improper and perhaps unethical activity. And I think there are distinctions between all of these things. But in our industry, these sort of unwanted advances and pressure and that sort of thing, I think, is exceedingly common.
All right, Sharyl Attkisson. She is, of course, a celebrated investigative reporter, journalist. The book, The Smear, How Shady Political Operatives and Fake News Control What You See, What You Think, and How You Vote. Sharyl, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for sharing your stories. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear